Zimbabwe's main opposition leader, Nelson Chamisa, has announced his departure from the Citizens' Coalition for Change. He says this is due to his party being contaminated and hijacked by ZANU-PF. Chamisa claims the infiltration took place through the abuse of state institutions. He believes the CCC is no longer aligned with its founding purpose and mandate. But the 45-year-old says he's not abandoning politics and urged Zimbabweans to rally behind fresh politicians. Political analyst Dr William Mpofu joins us to make sense of these developments. Dr Mpofu, appreciate your time at this hour. What are the key political, economic and social challenges that Nelson Chamisa highlights in his statement regarding the current situation in Zimbabwe?
I think if one looks carefully, he tends to magnify the problems that are clearly symptomatic of the Zimbabwean condition that Africa has come to understand and that the world has come to understand. And the problem being that political challenges have led to an economic crisis. And the economic crisis has tended to exacerbate or amplify the political problems. So it is indeed a political economy problem that has political symptoms. And the symptoms are morbid as we see them now, as we witness them now with the implosion of the CCC and the radical moves that are taking place and the announcement that came from the leader of the CCC that came. It's a sign that all is not well in paradise. There's trouble in paradise. And I repeat, this is all symptomatic of the troubling political and economic condition of Zimbabwe.
Now, how much of a shock is Nelson Chamisa's resignation from the CCC? It almost seems that he's left hundreds of thousands of Zimbabweans in the lurch, particularly those that support to the CCC.
Anyone that has observed the political developments, the economic crisis, and the symptoms that I was just talking about will not be surprised that this is happening. It was all going there. The party was being swept under his feet, and to blame for that is both the opposition political party itself and the ruling regime that is tilting the political, economic and electoral landscape against the political opposition in the country. So what we are getting alarmed at, what we are worried about right now, these developments that are raising our eyebrows, are only symptoms of the real problem of a toxic political culture that has been cultivated and irrigated in that country. And it is the political culture that needs to be solved. Then all other problems, all other symptoms might be sorted out in the process. But a deep, toxic political culture is what is troubling Zimbabwe at this moment.
So Nelson Chamisa's involvement in politics has evolved over the years from MDCT to the CCC and now him resigning from the CCC. Is it fair to say that he's run out of ideas?
Yes, a political analyst and a political observer can say that when a leader opts out or jumps ship, it's an indication that they've run out of their wits, they've run out of stratagems, they've run out of political gamesmanship that is needed in confronting challenges. And one may observe that if the leader is jumping out of the ship because of the challenges that have arisen within and without the political party, what guarantee do we have that those challenges are going to emanate in whatever new unity, in whatever new arrangement is going to arise? The issue that is needed here is that Zimbabweans, including their leaders, that include Advocate Nelson Chamisa, should cultivate the habit of confronting problems and solving them, and of being politicians and playing the political game and winning and losing and winning within the political game and not jumping ship.
Well, one of the arguments that...
Because I've said this before, that Zimbabwe is one country that has a lot of politics to be played, but very few politicians. It's not political to resign, to escape, to avoid, rather than to confront challenges.
Well, one of the arguments that Nelson Chamisa and CCC in general have stated is that that ZANU-PF, which is the ruling party, uses state machinery in their favor. And it's almost very, very difficult and near impossible to overcome the use of state machinery. I mean, they're talking about state capture of the judiciary, for instance. How would you expect one to manage such a situation if that indeed is the reality?
True enough, there is a problem there. The legal landscape, the political landscape, the economic landscape, even the cultural landscapes has been toxified and poisoned against dissenting voices, opposition political parties, civil society organizations, and other truth tellers and all that. And you can only observe how difficult circumstances have been met for the political opposition in that country. But that should not blind us to the fact that the political opposition themselves, in their own internal situations and arrangements and structures, have increased and amplified these problems for themselves by not organizing themselves and arranging themselves in a manner that can allow them as organizations to survive the stormy winds, political winds that have been created by ZANU-PF. It was imprudent for the CCC, for instance, not to have organizational structures that can take care of organizational practices and procedures on a daily basis. It was not fair for CCC itself to organize its power, its control, and all its systems and structures around an individual and not an organization. That created an opportunity for the ruling party to destroy this arrangement, this organization called CCC.
Dr. Mpofu,
because the ruling party has taken advantage of complaints and grievances that are coming from within the political party.
Dr. Mpofu, was Nelson Chamisa elected into office? Was he elected to head the CCC?
Unopposed and largely not really elected, because this is a political position that was appropriated and that was assumed after the passing of the leader Morgan Tsvangirai. And that alone was a loophole that the ruling regime has taken advantage of. And the dissenting voices that have come, the recalls that have come from within the CCC, are recalls that have come because of internal grievances, which then the ruling regime has taken advantage of. So the political opposition has got its own political homework to do before and after blaming the toxicities of the ruling party. That is only taking advantage of internal crevices and cracks and grievances in that opposition political party.
So CCC aside, it's fair to assume that Nelson Chamisa still has a huge amount of goodwill in the opposition politics in Zimbabwe. Is this an opportunity for him to start afresh, firstly? And secondly, what is the plan? What does opposition politics look like in Zimbabwe without Nelson Chamisa?
Yeah, the problem is right there, where opposition politics will have to rely on indispensable individuals, apparently irreplaceable figureheads, apparently what you can call autocrats. The moment the power, the existence, and the survival of a political party is summarized in the body and the name of one individual, then you are operating outside the democratic project itself, the democratic ideal itself. Because parties are called parties because they are made out of organizations and groups with leaders and followers, not persons, not personalities, not cultic leaders and all that. By so doing, they are imitating the cult of Robert Mugabe in ZANU-PF and the cults of other political leaders that we have seen in the African continent. And that would be unfortunate for any opposition political party in Africa to develop like that.
Now, you've mentioned a few areas of inadequacy within the CCC, and one of those areas was the absence of structures. Now that Nelson Chamisa is out of the way, if you'd call it that, do you expect CCC to then formalize these structures? What happens to the CCC post Nelson Chamisa?
It can only be speculated. It can only be speculated, but as we know, in politics, history repeats itself. The same problems that emanated, the same problems that arose, might arise again if leaders do not raise enough emotional and political stamina and political wisdom to solve rather than to escape problems, to address rather than to avoid problems.
So let's talk about, I think the one thing that I didn't pick up from you is opposition politics in Zimbabwe. What does that landscape look like beyond this resignation of Nelson Chamisa?
Yeah, I will take this aside and remind ourselves and the listeners that there is a very brilliant statement that was said by Chairman Mao, the late leader of China, that when there is great disorder under the heavens, the situation is excellent. What might happen is that this chaos, this disorder, and all this catastrophe that is happening in that political landscape might actually be an opportunity for thought, for political thinkers to think, for political leaders to lead, and something new, something fresh, and something much more illuminating might arise out of all this disorder and out of all this chaos. So in all this crisis, there might be optimism. If the politicians arise and understand the fact that they may not waste a good crisis like this one, they may not waste a good disorder like this one.
And finally, if we look at ZANU-PF, they must be licking their lips at the moment, because obviously it allows them to reaffirm their position, stamp their authority, obviously courtesy of the many recalls that have been occurring in the last few weeks. Is this the position that they have?
Not that they're doing any better. All this disorder and what is happening tends to magnify the fact that ZANU-PF itself and its leader are illegitimately in power in Zimbabwe. So without a viable opposition, without a strong opposition, the illegitimacy of ZANU-PF and its current leader will tend to be more visible than it was before. So we are back to a de facto one-party state, a tyranny, a tin pot tyranny, and an absolute dictatorship, as it were. So this ZANU-PF might not have to celebrate for very long, because this will serve to illuminate their illegitimacy, and the challenge is within anyway.
Dr. William Mpofu, appreciate your time. Political analyst Dr. William Mpofu giving us that analysis on CCC's leader's resignation. That is Nelson Chamisa.